Welcome to The Happy Writer, a show about creating and sustaining a long-term author career. My name is Patty Jansen, writer of science fiction and fantasy. I've published independently since 2011. This show covers motivation, diversification, learning new skills, and your place in your career. Come on in and be happy. In episode 44 of The Happy Writer, I'm going to talk about getting a cover for your book. You know, there is the old saying, do not judge a book by its cover. Well, usually the sayings are made up from years of experience of collective humanity, and they are usually true. Sadly so, but they are. In this case, the saying could not be more wrong. Everyone judges a book by its cover, all the time. Your cover is one of the most important messages you're going to send to your readers, and it's vitally important that you choose a good one. Now, another thing that is true about book covers is that you don't automatically get a better cover by spending more money on it. In fact, it may be possible to spend very little at all and to get a very good cover, and it's also possible to spend a lot of money and get a very bad cover. Furthermore, as writers, we're always clouded by the judgments of our peers, and our friends will tell us how much they love our covers, even if those covers are actually hurting the sales of the book. An artistically good cover may not be a cover that sells. What is more, an artistically good cover may not be a book cover at all. It may be a beautiful piece of art, but not a book cover. Or it may be a very good book cover, but not for that particular book. Trying to get a cover for your book is full of pitfalls like this. Added to this, the fact that the cover is the thing where most writers will spend most of their money on in preparing the book, you will understand that it's vitally important that you learn a few things yourself before buying, commissioning, or even making a cover. Even if you're a graphic artist or you hire someone who might want to do it for a friend's price, they probably don't know how to design effective book covers. You cannot just grab an artist or a graphic designer, say someone in your family or circle of friends, and expect them to design something amazing. They won't be familiar with all the conventions of book cover design and will need to study what book covers are supposed to look like. So there is that aspect. The level of knowledge and experience of the person you hire this job out to is extremely important. It has to be someone who knows how book covers work. It has to be someone who is both skilled with art and with typography. The text of the book needs to be part of the design and can't be something that's slapped on as afterthought. Most artists don't have any idea of typography, and not all types of graphic designers do either. You have to get someone who has specifically designed book covers and who does this for books in your particular genre, and preferably who does this for self-published authors if you want to keep the price under the 4 figures. Book covers in traditional publishing are different. Very often they are allowed to be pieces of art because they are vying for their own design awards and they're speaking to a different audience. The book covers of self-published authors are designed to be eye candy, even at very small format, but they're not designed to go on books that are displayed on shelves or tables and picked up by people and turned over. They are usually not full of intricate details because they don't need to be. That level of detail gets muddy and is lost in ebook format. Often the image is colorful and bold, the type is big, and the imagery is extremely clear about the genre. Covers of traditionally published books are often a lot more experimental and can be subtle because the covers are designed to go onto a printed book. With that in mind, there are 2 things that a book cover needs to do. It needs to be visually appealing at a fairly small format, and it needs to clearly communicate genre. The title and your name should be legible, preferably at thumbnail format. The second thing your book cover needs to do is to communicate what sort of book the readers are going to get. If it's dark or light, if it's a romance or a thriller or science fiction. If, after all of this, you feel a little bit daunted about approaching someone to design a book cover for you, don't worry, there are a few hacks. In the first place, I would spend some time in your category on retailer sites and look at the books that are selling well. Take note of the covers you like that communicate your genre. If they are self-published books, the writer often credits the book cover designer in the front of the book. Make a note of these people and visit their website. See what else they do. Don't worry too much about the trade-published books. As I said before, their covers have different functions, and it's probably better not to emulate them, even if it was only for the reason that designers of those book covers charge thousands, not hundreds of dollars. Once you have a list of these book cover designers, add to your list by either asking your friends who they use, who they would recommend for use for your genre, especially if these friends are much more experienced than you. This is, by the way, one of the areas where I strongly recommend that you listen to people who have a lot more books out and are further up the ladder of publishing than you are. Sure, their opportunities for marketing and everything else are very different, but if they tell you that a book cover design doesn't cut it, or that a particular cover does not suit the book or is not well made, by all that's dear, listen to them. There are also a number of groups on Facebook where covers are made for sale. These are pre-made covers that you can buy where the designer will change the title and your author name, and you can already see the finished product. I have to admit that most of these are geared towards urban fantasy with magic and glowy hands, but there are also designers in those groups who do other stuff. The most important thing is patience. Join a group and look around for a while before you're likely to need a cover. See what works, and see which designer consistently delivers good work. Ask other authors about this designer. Have a look to see how well books with their covers sell. Have a look at how well they fit in the genre. Cover design is one of those areas where you don't want to stand out too much. Of course, the flip side of this is that cover design is highly subjected to fashion, and most established writers change the covers on their books once every so often. They wouldn't be able to do that if they cost thousands. A lot of these designers only charge a few $100s for their services. They're fast and efficient, and well-versed in making covers in the particular genre. This is also why it's important that you check whether the designer you like has done any covers in the genre where you want them to design something for you. There is a thing about square pegs in round holes, and in this case it's definitely true. A designer has a specific set of skills. If their thing is manipulating photos of people, don't ask them to do art, and don't ask them to design something with a landscape. You are probably not going to be happy with the result, and neither are they. I would also advocate that for your first cover, you go with one of the established and long-running businesses to minimize the risk of trouble. What sort of trouble? The cover designer is late. There are miscommunications about the subject and genre. You accept and pay for the cover, but you'd like to add an audiobooks 3 years later, or change the branding of the typography. It's not terribly hard to design a cover and call yourself a cover designer, but only the good businesses have excellent refund, contract breaking, and non-completion policies, and they will also keep your file on record for a very long time. So if you want to go back 5 years later and ask them if they can adapt your book for a print wraparound cover, because you never did that when you first published, then they can. They still have the file. They can make print files and audio files, and they can spruce up the design because they still have the original files. You also want to deal with a business that is known to be punctual and fairly well established. They might not be the cheapest, although you would be surprised, because really there is no need for you to spend more than $500 on a custom-designed cover, and you may even end up spending considerably less. There is a lot of competition in the cover design world. You may even be able to pick up a pre-made cover for less than $100. If you don't have that much money, then save up until you do. It really is not that much. If you can't afford a cover designer, you could probably not afford an editor either, and it would probably be a good idea to save up and spend a bit more time with your manuscript. A cover communicates what's in the book, and it needs to be well made. A poorly made cover will hurt your book, and as author with no graphic skills, you're probably not in a position to tell the quality of the cover design. This is always why you should ask a couple of more experienced people. Don't ask your friends because they will love it no matter what. Don't ask your peers because they won't know what they are talking about. Ask someone who has a lot more books, who has been publishing for quite a while, who makes their living at it, and who has seen a lot of covers over the years. If they say you should get another cover or even a different designer, then please do. Of course, all this can be financially painful. I have seen authors spend a lot of money on otherwise beautiful covers that didn't suit their books. To be honest, we are all bound to make that mistake, at least at one point. I once had a whole series of covers designed by a well-known cover designer who did a really good job. They were beautiful covers, except the books didn't sell. The covers had people on them, and none of my other books have people on them. They didn't fit my brand, and I don't think they communicated enough that they were fantasy, so I changed them. The sales increased. I still love those original covers because they were really very good. They were just not the right covers for those books. This is a learning process. It's important that you don't spend too much money. Don't spend a huge amount of money expecting to get something amazing that will sell your books. No, use the money from past sales to upgrade the cover or to get a really cool cover designer for another project. But an effective book cover doesn't need to cost more than a few $100s. It doesn't need to cost anything at all. One of my most successful covers is the one for Fire and Ice, the first book in the Icefire trilogy. This cover cost me nothing because I put it together myself. At the moment, the trend in fantasy is covers with symbols and typography, and the cover for Fire and Ice was probably 6 years ahead of that trend. To be honest, a cover with a sword has always been popular in fantasy. That doesn't really get old. But after the trend where all covers had to have characters with glowy hands, we are now seeing a revival of the trend of covers that don't have people on them. If you're a little bit graphically talented, you can absolutely learn to make your own covers. It will probably take some trial and error, but the great advantage we have as self-published authors is that we can change our covers. It's a little bit more difficult if there is also a print book, but then again, there is nothing to stop you from noodling around with ebook covers, and once you're happy and you have gone through a few iterations, to also put that cover on your print book. There are courses that teach you how to design covers. Cover design is a marriage between art and typography, and they're both equally important. You're probably going to have to invest in some software and some assets, such as a subscription to a stock photo site, and buy the really good fonts. Don't use the free ones forever. Some of them are okay, but it's only once you've started buying the elaborate fonts that are not free that you can pick which of the free ones are fine for use. Don't expect to turn out your first cover and be successful. Try your covers on a few short stories or something like that. You want to become part of some communities where learning of cover design artistry is discussed. Learn from the masters. There you go. Those are some of the aspects that go into cover design. As with most things in publishing, it's not a good idea to do any of this in a hurry. Or if you're in a hurry, just grab a good-looking pre-made and put that on until you get something else. Don't be precious about your cover. At some point you will probably change it. The best cover is not the most expensive one, or the one that cost you the most, or the one your friends like the most. the best cover is the one that helps you sell the book. In the next episode, I'm going to be looking at how to choose an email list provider for your mailing list. Thank you for listening to the Happy Writer Show. Check out links and information about other episodes on my website at pattyjansen.com, where you can also find out about my books. You can support me by subscribing to the show or on Patreon at patreon.com/pattyjansen.